to meet changing needs of the board. There was a suggestion to allow board members the opportunity to review these items together prior to ranking to allow some additional reflection on behalf of the board members and consensus building as a group. So that is the purpose of why this has been listed in the committee of the whole. President Rosick requested that I place each item within the subject area of a standing committee, village board, and also identify from those buckets operational priorities that may or may not be within your purview as a board. But she had requested that I weigh in. So just to keep in mind, we have initiatives, the 2020 Village Board initiatives were moved forward into 2021. So we continue to progress on those initiatives. And the purpose of ranking is to identify those topics that can move forward. We have the time available to proceed with additional items. So with that, I will turn it over to the group. If you have any questions relative to how I put things in different buckets of standing committee order, hopefully most of that made sense to the group. That's all subject to change based upon the board's direction, but I just thought I would do that as a first start. And then, we're hoping for tonight to be able to discuss some of these, come to some consensus, and also identify the appropriate group to work on various items. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. As a new member, I have a question about developed capital facilities planning. Could you give me a little guidance on, is that mostly under it looks to me like it's predominantly a DPW item?
Trustee Amenta is actually the individual who submitted on that initiative. Trustee Amenta, I don't know if you'd like to comment.
Yeah, I mean, we have the long-range financial plan, but which lists capital projects, but it's not really a capital plan. A capital plan is both for roads, sewer, water, DPW stuff, but also village facilities, other village buildings and parks. So it would be one place where, everything is brought together as to, what needs to be done. It's what the total need is, in addition to like what projects are that are anticipated to be happening in the next 5 years. And we don't really have any one place where our entire capital program is all together in one place. And the problem with the long-range financial plan is that it really is designed to figure out when we bond and what we're going to bond for. It's really oriented towards that. It's not what I think the board really needs to do, which, for example, DPW yard. We've had several studies about what needs to be done at the DPW yard, and we have to make a decision. Are we gonna stay at the DPW yard and try to modify it to fit the department, or do we want to look for an alternate site? So they're kind of like broader decisions and broader things that we have to think about, and so they don't, they kind of intersect with the long-range financial plan, but that document really has a different purpose. So that's what the capital plan, I don't know if that explains it.
It does. And so my question is, it seems really important because it's a blueprint to moving forward.
Yeah.
So relative trustee time, village staff time, coming up with things that we would need on it, and then time that we would need to meet. Like if the village staff came up with a list of facilities, everything from the sewer connector to, Lake Drive to Oakland, if they made a list of everything, could we do this in one cow?
I think we could start, but like I said, it would have to incorporate, and the stuff we have like on resource management that we've talked about at Hubbard Park. It would have to include, which is also DPW, their facilities maintenance people, you know, they have it all in their head. You know, we have to replace the roof on Village Hall. It's, you know, so it's just getting stuff out on paper. And I think even if we just had like a list, I mean, it doesn't have to be a fancy thing. We don't have to pay a consultant, you know, $50,000 to do it. But even if like each thing had a page, you know, and then maybe we could start by asking questions or figuring out, you know, what where it fits in the timeline or the format. So, I mean, I think it could start really simply, but just to be, you know, a single place where we have, you know, whatever studies have been done, whatever thoughts we have about all the different infrastructure things. For example, the tree, you know, we've talked a couple times about the forestry, the canopy and tree replacement and how we kind of need to step that up. I mean, that's a capital program really. And the thing about our streetlights and replacing our streetlights is another one, you know, it's sort of like after, I mean, I have some of them in my head, but you know, as the board turns over, I could very well see someone in 5 years saying, what do you mean about the streetlights and they're not in conduit and we can't update the boxes because we have to completely redo the underground wiring for the streetlights, you know? So it's just so it's all in one place and we don't forget it. And like I said, it doesn't have to be detailed or fancy. So I think it would be great to start, and we probably could get through it in a cow, but it does require the people who have all this in their head at DPW writing it all down. So that, you know, that will be some time for them.
Right. I guess the way I'm approaching this is we have come through a crisis year.
Mhm.
And so we need to figure out after everything that we've been through, and we're not done, we have another 6 months at least to go of crisis management, basically, to prioritize, like, how do we wrap up the strings from what the tattered 2020, move through the first 6 months of 2021, and come up with a long range plan. How do we get all back on track after that? And this just seemed, you know, I wasn't really familiar with what it all meant. And it seemed like it could be a driver that should be done before we do the long range financial plan, if it, you know, depending on staff time. But I would think just starting with the list and lead responsibility department people would be helpful before we got to budget. Personally, for me, I think that doing the DPW and the police org study, those are my top priorities. And if I had to push something to 2022, it would probably be Village Hall org structure and the historic preservation. Do we want to, anybody else have something you'd like to add now, or do you want to go around the table? Questions?
I think Wes and Jessica both had their
Okay.
hands up.
Okay, Jessica?
You know, my thought about the document and sort of, I was thinking about how DPW had put together the list of vehicles and the need and ranked each of the vehicles. Excuse me. So in my mind, I've been sort of thinking that would be really helpful. The ranking also of priority, because there is just a lot that needs to get done as far as infrastructure goes within the community. And so if there's a way that we could get some sort of prioritization from staff to, you know, I think sewers, I'm just making it up as an example, but maybe it's really, you know, Oakland. So having, you know, a similar format where each one is a page, you know, we did each vehicle was a page, and its ranking and its age and just a little bit of background, you know, I think would be super helpful for us to then strategize, kind of to your point, Trustee Stoker-Rand, how do we wrap up and head into 2021 after this year? Because I think we're not done, and we are going to have some, you know, some continued challenges. And so how do we prioritize where we go from here. Our infrastructure is old and needs our attention, but what needs the most attention first, I think would be super helpful. So for me, I think it would probably be that, um, and then the police study. It sort of is, the historic preservation piece for me is really something I feel really passionate about. So, and I had brought it forth. So it's hard to see it kind of keep getting pushed down the road. But I also get it. Like, it's not mission critical. And right now that is really sort of where we are. What is mission critical and how do we sort of keep things moving forward? So thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Warren?
Yeah, just a couple things, and kind of a little bit all over the map here, but I do agree. I think it was you, Trustee Stokebrand, who mentioned I want to get the work done from some of these studies, and I agree with that. Especially the trying to get the list in front of me, and of course I scrolled the wrong way. DPW, police, parking and transportation. I'd really like to get that work kind of done and buttoned up. I'd also prioritize obviously the ongoing equity initiatives that we have. And in terms of just the conversation we were having around kind of a larger kind of look at capital projects and capital prioritization, there's a saying, kind of an old saying that I've probably heard 100 times in my career: if it's not written, it doesn't exist. A little bit of hyperbole, but if you don't have that written down and prioritized, it's tough to say that it kind of exists as a comprehensive document. And I do agree with Trustee Carpenter that it'd be helpful as we decide, in terms of what our priorities are, long range planning, even year-to-year budgeting, that would be very helpful to have. And moreover, it kind of, having kind of a very comprehensive capital planning document would help to establish a lot of transparency, which is, I know, something that, also, I think all 7 of us at one point or another have spoken about how we want to be transparent and how we want to bring even more transparency to our governance. So I like that idea as well. But again, it becomes a question of competing priorities and what do you prioritize? And just in terms of, for my money, implementation based on these different analysis we've done, I think equity pieces, gosh, there's so much here that I'd like to prioritize. But the question really goes over to you, Rebecca, as to how much we can realistically get done. And, can we get something done in the space of one cow? I mean, it would be great if we could just identify what we can do quickly as a board and implement. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Ursink, did you have anything to add?
I also agree. I think this is a good idea. I mean, especially for, just kind of our knowledge base moving forward, if there are new trustees on the board, just to understand kind of what's happened. Maybe there's things that Trustee Stokebrand and I are not familiar with, and or new trustees won't be familiar with. So to keep an ongoing record of those capital needs and projects, I think it'd be well worth it. I don't want to lose sight of that what Rebecca had us do, about a month ago when we all kind of listed our priorities. So I don't want to lose sight of that. I don't know if this is if our discussion right now is kind of replacing what we did there, or if that's already on the schedule and we're talking about something new. So I'm just a little confused. I know there are some items on that list that were kind of already being done. But again, it was a kind of a group exercise and we all came together to do it, and that was the result. So I want to make sure we don't lose sight of that particular list. The only other thing that I would say, so I do think it's a good idea. I want to make sure that it fits in the grand scheme of things and everybody's schedule. I also do think, we have a pretty important, current kind of topic with the consideration of religious artifacts on village property that we just kind of went through with the tree lighting, with the menorah, and then with anything other, sort of public, that wants to place something there. So I do think that that's a really kind of sort of timely discussion, because, we are currently without a policy on that. We are kind of open, we are exposed a little bit to, a lot of different, potential issues there. So don't want to lose sight of kind of what we all came together to do. No, we need to talk about the religious artifacts or whatever, whatever that is on the public right of ways. And then I do agree that I think this is a good idea, moving forward though as well. So.
Thank you. Trustee Bockhorst?
Okay, sorry. So the priorities that we have for 2020 have changed, of course, due to the pandemic and the circumstances. So I think that, continuing with the fact that we've heard that we are going to, there's no vaccine that's going to be readily distributed to the entire village, and that we have to keep that in mind for quite some time. So anything that, that ties with that should move to the foreground. I hear what Trustee Carpenter is saying about historic preservation, because I'm with her. I voted for that as well as one of the priorities. And, my boss in my day job, he is a big historic preservation person. And so there's a lot that I think that we can do really quickly once we get that ball rolling. But do we need to get that ball rolling right now? Probably not. And I hate to say that as well, Trustee Carpenter, just because it is something that I think that this board could congeal around, and that we all do share an interest around, and going forward that would be useful, not only for this existing board, but for any of the new members that we will get this spring. And then secondly, we do have, as you all have mentioned, so I won't spend too much time on it, but we do have the police organizational study as well as the DPW study. So I voted for both of those studies in some fashion. I look forward to us working on those. And I don't want to throw away, a combined almost $100,000 of taxpayer, actually $150,000 of taxpayer money, or whatever the cost was. We do have to continue. We have great recommendations. I would like us to keep in mind that staff, and I think you've mentioned this, Trustee Stoker-Brown, that we want to, or maybe it was Trustee Menta, that we do want to get the information from staff and what their priorities are as well. And as much as I do appreciate the board prioritization program and how do I call it, discussions, I want us to always keep in mind that those that are doing the jobs day to day, i.e. the village staff and the village manager, that we really work collaboratively with them instead of in a top-down, you guys must do these things, because at the end of the day, they really know what the specific needs of the organization are. And it sounds like that's something that at least the majority, if not all of you, had mentioned is going forward. Regarding the pandemic, going back to that though, and one of the items, the looking at another wave of business improvement or business loans or grants. Now, I know the federal government has just released a lot of information, and this is pertaining to a different sector, but I do think that we want to keep a lot of our discussions, at least in Q1 of 2021, relevant to what our immediate needs are in this village, and maybe not necessarily where we would like to go with that. So I can comment later on perhaps, but that's right. I think I'm in line with the majority of the trustees as far as where we're going with this. So thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Amenta?
I was just answering the question about capital facilities planning. I didn't actually have a chance to give some of my priorities. So AMI, I don't see that. I mean, we're not going to have people knocking on people's doors and wanting to go into their houses, probably till the summer, maybe even later. So, I mean, I think that one is most likely extended to the end of 2021 or maybe even 2022. The DPW organizational analysis, like we received it and we've never talked about it. Or I don't know, I'm not in public works, so maybe you did, but I think that one, and that one actually, I think we got much more concrete recommendations from the police study. The DPW study sort of said, well, you have to go back and figure out what it is you really want to do. And then that'll inform all these other issues. But as I mentioned about the DPW yard, we can't make a decision about that or about vehicles or anything until we've talked about services and service options for providing services and that kind of thing. So I really don't want to drop the DPW analysis. I think we have to start talking about open records. I was hoping it would be on the agenda for this meeting. We've had, when you look at the amount of staff time that is being spent dealing with open records requests, and now we have complaints to the village about it that are taking our time and taking staff time. We have a very brief policy on open records. Open records law is now 40 years old and has not kept up with technology. So there's a lot of issues. I think in order for us to continue, I think this board's commitment to being transparent and open with government and also to save, to be a lot more efficient in how we're spending our time. I think if we just take review chapter 155, and this is really something I don't think takes staff time, I think it could just be the board. Like, I think we need to go at, take a look at chapter 155, and there's a whole bunch of issues about Robert's rules, meeting cancellation, censure of board members. There's a whole bunch of issues, minutes that come under 155. And that's really board self-management. It's not staff, it's this board making its decisions. The solar panels process, I think that's one that's a pretty simple one that also is going to save staff time and board time, and we should move forward with that. It's not a very complicated one. I've asked a couple times that we have a calendar for the summer, so we don't get into situations of planning too many events or 2 events on one weekend. I think we really need that coordination. And I talked about doing some kind of annual report, which I think would be really useful for residents to understand, what we're doing, what we're talking about, what we're making progress on, what we expect to do the next year. I just, it's, I think it's incumbent on us to inform people of what village government's up to. So those are my priorities. Thank you.
So if you could give me 1, 2, 3, 4, I wonder, David, what were you thinking if you had to do 1, 2, 3, 4?
Well, I would take AMI off. The other ones are like a lot already in progress. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a hard question. I guess
we can come back around. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out how to narrow this down a little bit. But I guess my question is, if Leanne is on the phone, is this a contract, the AMI, that has not been signed yet? Have we heard from DPW? Is this something that we think we could start in the 3rd quarter or the 4th quarter?
I do not believe that Leanne is on the phone, but we have signed a contract for AMI. We have delayed that a year on the auspices of COVID. We are scheduled to come back to you as a board to review moving forward and how to move forward at the end of January 2021. So we will need an answer on that, and we'll need to review the contractual components. I'm not, off the top of my head, I don't know specifics in terms of timing, whether that, we were always initially ready to deploy in the spring of each year. And so that would need to be a question that we'd follow up with with our contractors of whether fall would be an applicable time.
And so in terms of, can we do this in the 3rd quarter? I guess I can't answer that question because without Leanne's input. To me, it still is doable in 2021, but I don't know, without her input, I can't, because this is the water meters, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so, I mean, we want this done as soon as possible. But it looks to me like we have to wait to hear if she's okay doing it then, and if the company's available. So that's really something we'll know more about the end of January, right?
Correct.
And
I mean, as I recall from what Leanne said, like most houses, what they need to do with the meter, they don't have to go inside, they can do from the outside, but there are going to be some situations where they're going to need to go into people's. West, you remembered more specifically.
No, that sounds about right. And I don't think it's a small, like, I'm kind of guessing, but I don't think it's a small number of houses that they have to go into. So, I do have a little bit of discomfort. I think you're right, David. It's going to be like almost a 2022 thing. I just don't think, even with a vaccine, I don't know that people are going to be real comfortable having people who don't need to be in their house.
Right.
I don't think it's a one-off. I thought it was more of a significant percentage, but I'm kind of guessing.
okay, Trustee Ursink?
Is that DPW staff that are going in houses, or is it contracted service?
I think it's a contractor, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. Contracted service.
Okay.
Okay, so agenda management to me sort of ties in with open records and
Trustee
maybe.
Stokerbrand. Sorry.
Oops. I'm sorry, go ahead, Trustee Bach.
Right. So I was just wondering what we're being exactly asked to do at this point as far as prioritization, because I know that we all voted on the top 5, and I've looked over the agenda a couple of times, including the last time that I saw this information. So are we whittling it down even more? Or what is the point, or what are we trying to achieve during this cow tonight?
I think we want to figure out the top 5 for if it's still the same going forward for Q1 as it was previously. And so
And
I
we
believe
have the top 5 delineated here for us right now. And then also, I mean, I guess I would like to say that if it is something for Q1, unfinished business should always be something at the top of our list, and things that staff have asked of us in the past and things that we have already started working on. So, and I think that's where we're going for a lot of this. And is regarding the AMI and any information that we need from DPW, I'd be more comfortable if we got kind of a report, and maybe we circled back to that and perhaps, brought that back if we had that, when we have that information versus, and I'm, trying to figure it out, at the end of the day. But, so the top 5 initiatives that we all voted on, are we rejiggering that right now? Or because we all did have to put our top 5 and do that a couple of months ago. So I guess I'm just a little confused.
right. Rebecca, I guess maybe some direction between, on the one list, we have the 2020 Village Board initiatives continue to 2021. That's what I was referring to mostly, but then we also have the larger list with rankings 1 through 2.
Great question. So for purposes of on the second sheet of the memo, there's the 2021 Village Board initiatives that continued to 2020, continuing to 2021. Pardon me, got my years mixed up there. So what I'm hearing from the board tonight is that there may be maybe consensus from the group to not proceed with AMI in 2021, pending on information from the staff relative to schedule and how that contract would work, because we need to answer those questions. We can't make decisions in a vacuum on that, which we're happy to bring forward and provide some more information on. I was also hearing that education on historic preservation may no longer meet in the top tier of those items that we need to accomplish in the next quarter. Again, a reason why we reevaluate quarterly to make sure that we're on the same page. Trustee Amenta has a comment. I'm not sure if you.
I mean, I'm looking back at November 2nd, after you asked us on our own to vote on things. And 6 out of 7 of us did vote for the historic, 5 out of 6 for the historic designation. So the top 3 were police, the police issue, welcoming ordinance, Trustee Warren, then historical designation. And then 4 and 5 both had just 2 votes. So I didn't really consider them, that's only 2 votes. So I didn't think they should even be. The top 3 all had at least 4, if not 5 or 6 votes. So I'm just like, that was the last thing we did. We had 5. We had historic designation, had a lot of votes, and we had 2 at the bottom that had just 2 votes.
So this is all for 2021 in general. So I mean, if we're talking right now specifically about Q1 of 2021, having 5 major initiatives, we all know there's no way we're actually going to get through probably even more than 1 during that time, let alone 5, unless they're concurrent items that can, so I would say that, obviously we started on the police, the DPW organizational study. We already did that and paid for it. So let's not let that go by the wayside. And then we also have the welcoming ordinance and the historic designation. So right there, it seems to me like we have 4 or 5, and for the purposes of us deciding what we're going to do in Q1, let's pick our top 2. And then if we have the luxury and the good fortune of actually getting through 2 things in the next quarter, with 5 meetings and everything else that we've kicked down the can, then hey, great, I welcome that problem that we have to actually revisit this again. But I think let's not have another meeting on this. Let's bang it out tonight, guys. We've got, we have the votes here, we have the priorities here. Let's, as I think it was Trustee Menta said earlier, at some point you got to make a decision. So I would be for making that decision sooner than later.
Thank you, Trustee Bachhorst. I was just going to say, I think for some reason, when I saw that the historic preservation, I mean, we can't get a hold of the State Historical Society, and I think that's pretty critical to the historic preservation. I see no reason to put that off at least until second quarter of 2021 or the third quarter.
But you actually could like theoretically work on it in their other organizations. Sorry to interrupt, but I see also Trustee Singh has his hand up.
Thank you, Trustee Bachhorst. Trustee Ursink?
I was just wondering if Rebecca was done with her, what she was saying. Rebecca, were you done with your comment?
Manager Ewald?
So I was going to just answer Trustee Bachhorst's question more specifically. Tonight, we're trying to pave the way for what we're going to focus on in Q1. As you said, it's a limited number of meetings. It doesn't mean that if we don't focus on something right now, we're not going to have an opportunity to review it later, but we need to stay focused. And for me, primarily, what that means with what you prioritize is also where it goes to get worked on and how it's worked on, because we have limited time together. So I want to be able to adjust how I'm approaching each topic based upon our time available. So if we're going to work with most of these topics in committee of the whole, then we need to prioritize a bit more or be more judicious with our time. If we're going to allocate them and have different standing committees play a role, that will be helpful for me to know, because then I know that I can start work in some other areas at the same time. And because half of our standing committees meet and then the other half typically meet on other topics. So that plays into the role. I know Trustee Warren had said, what are our low hanging fruit? What can we get done? Well, none of them are going to be necessarily one meeting discussions. You know, these are all meatier topics, which isn't good. That's positive, I think, on behalf of the board to say we want to take on these larger initiatives. But I just need to know I need to know how and who you want to have work on them, and I'd be able to answer that a little bit better.
Trustee Warren?
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. Appreciate it. And I do appreciate kind of the status update on these, and these are things that we've raised and we want to see get done. I mean, I guess what I'm struggling with is I just don't know that my votes would change all that much between November 2nd and today. I mean, I've taken some of the discussion that we've had tonight, and I mean, I do like the idea. I think COVID has to control everything, at least for the next, hopefully just 6 months. So, that kind of, that'll kind of supersede a lot of the things that we're doing. But, outside of that, and outside of, kind of a capital planning report, if we could put that together, I don't see a lot of things that I would move around too much in terms of how I voted from now until then. Now, if you're telling me we can append a few more things because we're moving more quickly through the list than we anticipated, I think that's a little bit of a different discussion. But if you're asking, is there some sort of like juggling our priorities? I think, in the last 6 weeks, I think that it's remained more or less static for me, notwithstanding. So in light of some of the comments I've made about, obviously we have to respond to COVID when we need to. So those are my thoughts.
Trustee Bachhorst, did you have your hand up?
I did. So, I mean, I agree completely with what Trustee Warren said. And I think for the sake of, getting to a lot of these things, I'm not sure why we would differ. I don't know how many other people feel that what they voted on in November, just, last month, or is different from where we stand today. So I would like to go down the list as far as like police, anything dealing with equity. And as we know, that has been a major that has come to the top of a lot of our discussions in 2020, whether or not it's COVID related or otherwise, but it also links in directly with our police organizational study and a lot of really what this community and beyond has been asking. So I think that for the success of this board and the success of doing what's best for the community, I think we already kind of went through this, and so I would love for us to come to a consensus, like I said just a few minutes ago. Are we okay with the top three? And if we are, then great. We can actually, achieve something in a really efficient and expedient manner. And I think that would go a long way for this board. So I would be ready to make a motion if that were, but I of course don't want to cut anyone else off from discourse and dialogue here.
Thank you. I have one question. So what difference does it make with time if we decide to approach the DPW? So we did housing, I'm new, so help me out here. Housing and parking and transportation, both after the studies were done, they both went to COW, is that correct? And
I'm sorry, transportation and parking was your question?
And housing.
So housing has not yet moved. from where it was at when it concluded. We did in housing analysis. I know that the CDA has discussed that. The CDA has been actively working on a TIF policy and application process, which we're hopeful will come forward to the board at the end of January. And then we're going to need to handle, which is not necessarily on this list, but we continue to work with whether or not we're going to extend TIF 1 or not for purposes of affordable housing. So that isn't that matter is time sensitive because it must be decided by the end of March. So we're going to be having that discussion. When you reference the top three, Trustee Stokebrand, were you referencing transportation and parking, DPW, Oregon Police?
I was just looking to make sure that we had, of all those studies that were done, that we decided which ones we were going to work on right away and which ones we could put off a little bit. Obviously, we're well into parking and transportations. There's no turning back, right? Except for like the stop signs and stuff, but we're all in on parking right now and there's no turning back. But in housing, we're going to be facing a decision by the end of March. So that's a first quarter decision that will have to be made. It seems to me equity is an ongoing thing. Some of us are part of the EDI training, and other than adding in the welcoming ordinance, I think in my view, we're covering that pretty well through at least the first quarter. So yeah, it looks to me like the police organizational study, DPW, and I guess the welcoming ordinance and equity together. And it looks like we have housing. So I would agree with Trustee Bockhorst. I think we've probably got too much. Trustee Amenta?
Yeah, I mean, I think the point of prioritization is, you know, also kind of a bigger picture of, I think it's difficult to, I mean, a prioritization exercise really is more of a 12-month, 6 months to 12 month. I mean, I think like AMI, I mean, we prioritized AMI, but it's just not going to work. We prioritized historic preservation, but Rebecca's tried and can't seem to get anyone on the phone. So, you know, I think there has to be some flexibility around here. So around it. So, I mean, I'm a little hesitant to say, oh, this is just, you know, I mean, I think we need to give direction so that if, you know, things are going along on the organizational analysis for the police, I mean, we have an update and next steps on that later on in this agenda. And like Kathy said, with EDI issues, they are ongoing. So, but I guess to me, I mean, I think we do need to add a couple things to the list. It's not like prescriptive, like, you know, we have to get to these, but it's an indication to staff of what we would like to see next up on the docket. I just want to say again, for open record stuff, if you look at what our village attorney spends, our clerk spends, and it's probably, well, I don't know, I haven't added it up, but it's quite a lot that we're spending dealing with open records, and it's something we really need to address, in my opinion. And then I would say also this chapter 155 is things that we as a board need. It's not a very long chapter, and we as a board should be looking at it and talking about it internally. But I don't agree that we should just have like 3 things on the list and that's all there's going to be for the first quarter, because stuff moves, stuff happens, things are ongoing, and this is more like policy. It's not do X, Y, Z in January and A, B, C in February. This is policy, a little broader.
Understood. I think staff is just looking for direction. Manager Ewald?
Can I just say, I don't think it's the role of the board to give direction to Rebecca. Well, this week I want you to do this, this, and this. I mean, the role of the board is to say, these are the topics we're interested in and we want to see some progress on during the course of an entire year.
Okay, Manager Ewald?
I did want to let the board know that I was able to get a hold of someone at the State Historical Society. So I do have someone, the person we were going to be working with before has since retired. So I just wanted to make that clear if you did want to put that on there. If not, I would echo Trustee Amenta's comments relative to open records. I think that is one item that you will touch through, hopefully through our discussion with the police organizational analysis as well as organization wide. And I too would like to lean into that topic so we are all on the same page and have an agreed understanding moving forward if time presents itself and the board is amenable. Thank you.
Thank you, trustee Bockhorst.
So yeah, thank you. So a couple of things I want to mention is that I'm not sure that all of these items have to go to COW. That's not, I don't know if that was agreed upon by this board. I don't believe so. We do have committees, but I do see that two of the major items, the police organizational study as well as the DPW, will be within the same group if we do break that down to committee. However, committees do exist for a variety of reasons across the across the country as far as local government is concerned, and that is to provide efficiency and to have smaller work groups and to get through more things concurrently. So again, and it doesn't have to be the top three, but we did go through, we have been going through prioritization for many, many years. We all were asked to rank back in November, or maybe it was October, and I know all 6 of us that are on this call tonight did that, okay? So we did do our ranking. We do have a final production of what we do find important. I haven't heard from staff or otherwise that there are new things that need to be looked at from this list that we have. But of course, there will always be things that do come to the board. We will always be working on other items that staff has identified as important and, time sensitive information. And as trustee Amenta said, it's not incumbent upon the board to dictate when staff works on what, not at all. We're giving overall general, policy direction. I feel, and maybe some of you disagree with this, but I feel that the top 5 that we have come together on and that we have in front of us are, I don't understand why we would differ from those unless there was an immediate and urgent need to do something, such as if there were a flood, 100-year flood or something, or, the pipes break or something that would necessitate emergency action. I will say, I know sound like a broken record here, but yes, you mentioned it, trustee Stokerbrand, the transportation and parking. So that is an ongoing thing. So it's not done. Like you said, it's not like it's checked off. A lot of the big decision making that we have to do right now, has already occurred. So that's not, but it is something that staff, I'm sure, will bring back to us when the need arises. The police organizational study, we all discussed this last time when we had this discussion, that is a very important thing. I agree with the whole open records premise, and I'm going to bring that up in a different vein tonight under items of future consideration, because there are some short-term solutions we likely could, or maybe even long-term, but we do need to look at our contract that we have with the, what is it, Phoenix, I think it is, Rebecca, and look at different ways that we might want to be able to use and process and obtain open records. I mean, that is a policy decision, and it is something that it might not be easy, but it is something that we have heard a lot about on a variety of levels, and we have discussed the length of time as well as staff time, community time, as well as money that does go into producing those open records. So that's incredibly important on a variety of fronts. So again, we have some really big ticket items right now that are pretty monumental. Again, the police and the DPW. The DPW study came out when? When did we get the results? About 4 or 5 months ago. I know we had the presentation.
Right before, at the beginning of COVID and before civil unrest.
Okay, so almost a year, 9 months ago. Right. So there you go. So we have something that we received the results from 9 months ago. We have yet to really, other than presentations and other information, that have actionable items to go forward. And I know this board knows this. Nothing is just one meeting, right? So we do have a lot on the docket. If we want to add more items to Q1, I'm fine with that. But what I would like to see us achieve before we start to get too late, because we do have a meeting coming up, is can we agree on the top 3 to 5 things that we've already voted on, agreed on, discussed, and then go forward from there? If we have to add more to the list, can we do that? And then also regarding the welcoming ordinance, equity, that's something that can go to, it can go to the committee section, JP&L, those guys or whatever, since police and DPW are in the other committee structure. So there's a way to make this efficient, productive, and also we will, we'll find out tonight when the board members make their board, what's it called? I forget, not announcements, but reports, whether or not the current board members that are serving with us right now are going to be running again. And if they're not, we all will know that we will have a, very different board members in the spring. So we might not want to get too far ahead of ourselves because, a lot will hinge on the makeup of this board. But I feel that we have enough information to make an informed decision and to actually make a decision this evening, which I believe is something we already did make. We did go through this process.
Can I make a
time
point
and
of
time
order?
again.
Thank
If
you,
you're-
thank you, trustee. I would just like to say that the agenda was not set by me. But I do have a question. As a new trustee, I just wonder if maybe I see trustee Amenta and trustee Carpenter have their hands up. My question about DPW and the police organizational study is, what would be your preference for keeping this at committee of the whole or going to a standing committee, and why? I'll go with trustee Carpenter first and then trustee Amenta with your, if you could answer that question and then your comments, please.
Are you asking the question to me, or are you asking it to
You,
Manager Ewald?
Trustee Carpenter, that would be my question about committee of the whole or a standing committee for DPW study and the police org study. And then you had a comment to make too.
Yes. I mean, I'm fine with it going to committee. I think that we can be more efficient in committees. I think that we can get more done in committees. My question, I think, is actually for Manager Ewald, which is, since we all came to somewhat of a consensus in November, is there, obviously COVID made us, change gears, but not a whole lot has changed with COVID since from November to December. So I'm just wondering why we're kind of going back to this again, when I sort of felt like we were at a good place after that November discussion.
So
Okay, Manager Ewald, please.
We said that we were going to come back quarterly to check in. I had envisioned that it would have been more of a check-in, but there was an ask to have some more discussion because I believe that when we ranked in November, there were two remaining items, two of the bottom items on the list. I want to say they could have been, I don't have that list in front of me right now, but the historical preservation and
No, it was not that one. It was police union complaint and consider second CDA emergency business grant, only got 2 votes.
correct. So some clarification, I think, relative to the CDA grant would be, is 2 votes something that's really reflective of the whole board? Is that the board's intention? Or would
Oh,
we-
and Rebecca, who was it? Like, you
Why
said
is
there
she
was
allowed
ask
to
for more.
interrupt?
You've been doing it as well. I was
Excuse me,
going to
no,
follow
but I
follow-up
have not.
question.
Trustee Bakers, could you just let Manager Ewald finish, please?
Okay,
No, I
sorry.
had
And
my
then I do
hand
have
up
a
first.
follow-up question.
And then I have,
It's like trustee.
right, and then after that will be trustee Amenta and you'll be third. Okay, Rebecca, Ms. Ewald, please finish.
So to answer your question, trustee Carpenter, it was to kind of assess, is that the ones that really only got 2 votes, is that reflective of the board or not? Or is there something else in between that time? Because there are a number of items on future item of consideration that may have come to the top. The other question that I have for the board is really relative to how you want to work on some of the larger ones, to the point that trustee Stoker had mentioned tonight. If you're going to be working on, for example, these always in the committee of the whole, then that will slow down some of our time together, because I can't have multiple different org analysis working at the same time if we're going to run everything through there. If so, that's okay. But I just need to know from the board, because as we move forward tonight, I want to set up time allocation for how we can accomplish these next steps at our next several meetings as we go through the first quarter. And that will give me a better indication as to whether we have the capacity to handle anything else. Because some of these are meatier policy items, so they're not going to necessarily get done in just one meeting. And so if I can get that from this group tonight, it will really help me be able to then put pen to paper to see what we can potentially accomplish together.
Thank you. So the bigger question is, what are we willing to go to standing committees with? Is that correct? The DPW and the police org study? Do we need to get a consensus on whether those should go to standing committee or go to the cow? Trustee Amenta?
Yeah, I think that we should go to standing committees with both of those reports. If we're going to put off the historical designation because, you know, that's just moving slower than we thought it was going to move, then that leaves 2 of the 5 that, and then there were 2 that only had 2 votes. So I think we definitely need, if we're saying top 5, I think we definitely need to at least vote on 4 and 5 and see if there's even 4 votes for them. And I also want to say, if we're going to try to come to a decision and come to consensus, I really ask trustees to limit their comments so everyone has an opportunity to contribute to the meeting. Thanks.
You're muted, Kathy. Trustee Zuckerbrand.
Thank you. I think I need new batteries. I'll call for my reinforcements. Trustee Bockhorst?
So I just want a follow-up question to Village Manager Ewald. You had said, and someone else just previously asked this, I think it was you, Trustee Sogabrand, that I thought we had come to this decision, and you had mentioned that we had, but someone or individuals had requested that there's a need for more discussion. So I just don't recall us as a board, you know, agreeing on this need for more discussion. So I was just wondering if you could walk us through why we're discussing this yet again, as far as that's concerned.
Trustee Bockhorst, how do you feel about these things going to committee? You and Trustee Warren and I will be doing the heavy lifting, DPW and police org. I just want, you know, let's all be honest. How do you feel about these issues, these studies going to the committee level first versus
Well, I think that that's okay historically, except in the past couple of years, that's how work has gotten done on the board. And that's how you can be more efficient. For a variety of reasons, I won't enumerate them right now. We have gone away from that and gone more into a committee of a whole, but that makes a lot of sense. And I get it, it's a little inconvenient. As you said, Trustee Stokerbrand, that we have both DPW and Public Works major discussions that will occur. However, we only have a couple of months in Q1. These are not going to be wrapped up within those 3 months. Committee structures will change based on who is on this board in the spring, who is the village president, et cetera. So I think that we could start there. We just pick one. And I think that this board has prioritized which one, but I could be mistaken. So that to me would be a little bit more important. But also, yes, take them to committee. As we've seen right now, even with only 6 of us, we are not even getting through, you know, we're unclear slightly why this is brought back, but also what the priority is. But I would like to know why we are discussing this again. But if that's not important to the rest of you, it is important to me. I thought we'd made a decision. I thought we were ready to act. I don't know why we're going through another hour and a half talking about something that we've already hashed out, unless we're going to do something new on top of that. So if it's to come up, I'm fine with open records. Trustee Amenta, I think that's a great idea for a variety of reasons. And I have also, back to 155, I have brought that up over time and time again. There's been a lot of times where you guys, I didn't even get a second when we were talking about Robert's Rules of Order and other policy and other kind of like board behaviors and decisions and ways and conduct and ways that we can all work together. I think that's paramount, but I think through the course of this next spring, probably a lot of that will shake out naturally. So I'm not sure if we want to, but right now we have these studies we have spent over $100,000 of taxpayer money on. We need to do something with that data. Otherwise, we're just throwing money out the window. So how we can get to that is probably, I think, Kathy, Trustee Sokerbrand, you're doing that right now. Can we work on these in committees? How can we advance the ball? And adding 3 or 4 new items, okay, might be a great exercise when we have time to do that. But right now we really don't. So I'd like to get started. No problem taking those to committee, Trustee Stokebrand. And yes.
Thank you. And Trustee Warren?
Sorry, I did not have my hand up. That was just kind of a random, there's a bug around me, so sorry.
Sorry, Kathy, Trustee Stokebrand, you're muted again.
I'm sorry. Trustee Warren, I was just looking for your input about going to the committees with the DPW study and the police org study.
Yeah, I'm good with that. I mean, obviously it's something that at some point will involve the whole board and the committees will report back. But I'm good with committees taking the laboring, or I think that gives us the opportunity to move it a little bit more expediently. So I'm good with assigning to committees.
Okay, thank you. And Trustee Ursing, please.
Thank you, Trustee Stokerbrand. I would agree. As much as I'd want to be a part of both of those studies, I feel that it probably is moving a lot faster within the committee, and just look forward to hearing what those committees come back with. But yeah, I think that's the best way to approach these topics.
Thank you. And obviously the committee meetings are open and anyone can sit in, so there's no reason that no one's not involved. Trustee Amenta?
Well, they usually happen concurrently though, so we are excluded. I was going to say, since the Public Works and Public Safety is taking those two issues, maybe JP&L budget and SIC, or I forget which one it is, should take open records and reviewing chapter 155. So we all have things that we're looking to work on.
So where would historic preservation fall then, Trustee Amenta? Do you know, I mean, what would your idea be about that?
Business community relations, maybe?
Yeah. And there's also the equity.
I mean, the equity work is ongoing. We have a consultant who's working. There's two different processes that are happening.
I agree.
Right.
And I think we're waiting for him to work with us on the welcoming statement, aren't we? Is that true, Rebecca? So I think that ball is moving forward continually without a specific committee assignment, unless there's someone that feels differently about that. Trustee Bockhorst.
I do. I think that could be handled in JP&L, that it's even though the ball has started, it still needs continuous uptake and it needs a home. So if we do have these other items in public safety and Department of Public Works, it makes complete sense that the welcoming ordinance, which isn't something, we already have a welcoming statement. It's just building upon that. So that is something that right now, I think tonight, we should assign this to either JP&L or Community and Business Relations. Doesn't matter, it's the same three people. So you could put it, whatever committee within that structure makes complete sense to me. Let's be efficient and expedient use of our time. And then the other items that we already agreed. Now, I understand that Trustee Amenta has brought up these 155 and the open records. Until we vote as a board and agree that those are the priorities, that, we're just recognizing that those are things that both you and I think are priorities, Trustee Amenta, but the rest of I'd like to know from the rest as well, if that's something that we're going to go there. But it sounds to me, and I could be wrong, maybe I'm not adding correctly, that we have at least 3, if not 4 big priorities that we have all agreed are the top priorities, and we should go forward on those.
Thank you. Trustee Carpenter.
I didn't get to finish my comment earlier, so
I'm sorry.
that's okay. So I do agree that we all kind of came to this consensus in November. It sounds like the only thing that has really changed, and Rebecca, maybe you can chime in, is the open records discussion and the open records sort of needs and or concerns. I know that staff has spent an exorbitant amount of time on them. So is that something that is important for staff to have done, or at least get the ball rolling in first quarter?
Rebecca, what about your time constraints?
I think that that's an important matter for both the board and staff. That has come through, and I think it's one that will touch a number of the different items that you're working on, including the police org analysis. So I think that it's timely and we'll have synergy with those. I would also like some direction on one of the items from the last ranking that only had 2 people rank, which was a second round of CDA emergency grants, because to Trustee Amenta's point, there were 2 at the bottom that only had 2 trustees commenting on, but they were just the only topics that had like at least 2 people commenting on. So there was great diversity in the ranking. So if that falls off, and open records would go in that place, I would just want some confirmation of that from the board.
Can I also ask?
Carpenter?
Thank you. Sorry. So I'm fine with where we landed in November, and then including or sort of extrapolating the open records discussion from the police organizational analysis to sort of amplify that conversation. My other question is about historic preservation is, we do have a committee. Is there the possibility of having the historic society, having them work on getting some traction and being able to present and doing some of that legwork before, and then sort of presenting it and sort of going from there?
And I'd be happy to answer that. I would be partnering with the Shorewood Historical Society to offer what we would be looking at, which is really an educational session. People wanted to know what their options were, or what the community's options were, for evaluating historic structures and how that could or could not or would not blend into any local regulations. It's been a topic here in the past, and we thought it would be good to provide that. If we can, if we can do that now that we have a contact, and provide that educational session to the community, I don't see a reason why you wouldn't. I'm just pending hearing back from the new person in the position at the State Historical Society to see what their availability is. So I can keep you posted on that. I don't even know at this time whether it requires a standing committee. I just intended on bringing it back to you guys as a board to say, I talked with them, we've coordinated with the Historical Society, and here's what we have. Are you game for pursuing it in this way?
Okay, thank you. Did you any further questions, Trustee Carpenter?
No, thank you very much.
So it looks to me like we've reached a consensus that we'll use the committee structure, the standing committee structure, and the police organizational study will go to public safety. The DPW study will obviously go to DPW. Historic preservation, help me, CB&L?
Yeah, business, I think probably community and business relations.
CB&L, equity.
The same or JP&L.
JP&L?
Mhm.
I think equity should be a cow thing. Isn't it kind of overreaching?
Okay, we're not sure on that one. Open records would be JP&L.
Yeah.
And capital facilities will go to business and finance.
Budget and finance.
Sorry,
Yeah.
budget and finance. I'm sorry. If that sounds good.
That sounds good to me.
Trustee Bockhorst.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so I guess I would like to ask a little bit about the procedure here, because up until now, we've all voted, and I appreciate, sorry, I have to do something with my mic here at Scoof.
All right, I think I'm unmuted now. Is that right?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead. In a couple of minutes,
Oh.
please.
So up until now, we voted as a board where things would go, and I understand for expediency, but it sounds like, forgive me, that we're making decisions now without everyone, are we going to do a hand raise, or is there a way to determine where these are going? Because it was just the two people, I believe, right now, and I'm fine with where the direction that these things are going, but which priorities, and are we going through the list right now and assigning these to committee, or what is our objective at this point? And have we added new things without actually voting as a whole that we're all okay with the next priority being X, Y, or Z? So I guess I'm a little confused about the procedure. It's just not in concert with how we've gotten here up until this moment. So that's where I'm at.
Trustee
That's my
Bockhorst.
question.
I would welcome a motion from anyone. I guess I would ask Rebecca what her preference is. Do you want a motion on what should be referred to standing committees? I think just by referring items to standing committees, we would be indicating a prioritization. How do you feel about that, Rebecca?
So for purposes of tonight, we're not scheduled to take any action, but I would like to receive that direction from the board. It would be easy for me to do right now if someone, and I can take that direction. Is there anyone that objects to the police org analysis going to the Public Safety Committee for work? I hear no objection. Does anyone object to the DPW org analysis going to the DPW for further work? I hear no objection. Transportation and parking will come with actions from the board, and recommendations will come from the TAG, which the board has prior authorized to provide the board with recommendations. Historical designation, education, and options will go to community and business relations. Are there any objections? I hear no objections. Open records will go to JP&L. Do I hear any objections? I hear no objections. And then a question that I had from going through that list was, there was discussion of equity. I didn't see one item for equity on the future agenda items list.
Welcoming.
Welcoming, which is on the initiative. So that's in, so we're making progress on with the EDI committee, and at the outcome of that, Sam Coleman was also going to be working with us on the welcoming ordinance following that.
And I would say that could probably go to CB&L once Sam is available and after we've, completed the appropriate amount of our EDI training.
Was that, I'm sorry, I just couldn't hear, community and business relations?
That would be my inclination. If anyone else feels differently, raise your hand, please. Trustee Bockhorst.
I'm fine with that, but I also think that it's not a bad idea for that to go to strategic initiatives, although we do have two big heavy items concurrently going there. But if this is way down the road, it could definitely go there, because I've worked on the welcoming statement, and it fits in with other things that we're doing. So it doesn't matter, I guess.
Okay, same group. Trustee Amenta?
I just felt that EDI stuff should go to the cow, just because, I think committees, if there's something that we have to kind of work out, the disadvantage of committees is that the other three who are not in that committee don't understand the thought process and the, what all went into it. And, so, I think it's something, if we need to get an ordinance or, develop something, that's one thing. But I kind of think the EDI is important enough to everybody that I guess I would feel like I'm not having it. I think all of us I would like to be involved in it. And also because we have two trustees who are on that specific work group. And, I really don't know what's being going on or what's being proposed or anything. So I just feel like I would rather have an opportunity to be involved through the whole process rather than just come in at the end,
We can go around the table on that. Then the question is, do we put equity with CB&L or leave it with the cow? Trustee Ursink?
Well, I am one of the trustees that are part of the conversations with the meetings with Sam Coleman. So, I could go both ways, but I could also see this going to NBR, and we can discuss it as a group and then bring our findings back to the group of the whole. Committee of the whole.
I also wanted to add, we had mentioned capital planning going to budget and finance.
Yeah.
Trustee Carpenter?
I could go either way. Either one is fine. If I have to say a preference, I would probably say the community and business relations. And then present to the board, just because then there would be an opportunity to make changes then, and we could be doing multiple things at once. I think sometimes at the cow, we can get stuck a little bit. And then, sorry, I think you had another question.
No, I was just looking for guidance on the equity piece, whether it went to a cow or a standing committee.
Okay.
I'll get you in a moment, Trustee Bockhorst. Trustee Warren?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of going to echo some of the comments that we just heard. I can really go either way, and I'm trying to take out, like Trustee Amenta, I want to be involved in these conversations, and I wouldn't be, but also I recognize that committees can sometimes function more efficiently, and as long as we got to discuss it at the COW after the committee work, I certainly will have.
I think he froze. I think I missed the end of your comment.
I think he's okay with the committee.
Okay.
Wait, did you guys hear anything?
We kind of heard it. We missed the end. We missed the end.
Oh,
Can you give me a snapshot of your last two sentences?
Rebecca had her hand up, so she might have a preference one way or another at the top of the conversation. Sorry about that.
Okay, Trustee Bockhorst. I think can you unmute? Trustee Bockhorst, we can't.
Saying go to somebody else.
Yeah, so Manager Ewald, did you have anything further to add?
I was just going to say, at this point in time, I don't believe that it's incumbent upon you to make a decision, because I don't believe it's work that we're going to get to until second quarter, just based upon the phased progression of the EDI work that we're doing with Sam Coleman. So we're entering phase 2. That wouldn't come in until towards the end of phase 2 into phase 3. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you. Okay, we're ready. Trustee Bockhorst.
Oh, thank you. So I was just going to say we leave it up to staff and we take care of it, when the time, basically what she said in different ways.
Okay, thank you. Then I would just ask if anyone else, we could go around the table if you have another comment. Otherwise, if Rebecca, Manager Ewald, do you have what you need from us? We could have a short break before our meeting.
Sure. One other point of direction, I just want to make sure that I'm hearing clearly. We had talked about the capital plan.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
There was some
finance.
Correct. There was some discussion on the capital plan. I am going to logistically need to have some follow-up on our discussion of our auditor's report that was done last spring. If you'll recall, we left off on that because COVID happened, and so we switched gears. But there are some follow-up items that we do need to get to. So I'm mentioning there because I know that they're going to come up through the course of these other organizational studies. So want to put that out there. But then Trustee Amenta, in the last comment you said, you brought up again capital budget, but were you referring to the capital plans?
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess direction here from the board, does anyone object to capital plans being handled by the Budget and Finance Committee?
And would that committee also take care of the auditing items you were talking about if you need committee input first?
That is the committee of which I have placed those in. So my request of the board is, as those present themselves, I would like a committee to take those to. So if there is not an objection, I will bring those to you as they are available.
Okay, does anyone else have anything? Otherwise, we could take a quick break before the 7:30. Oh, Trustee Amenta?
Well, Trustee Ursink had his hand up first.
Trustee Ursink?
Yeah, I'm wondering also if we can get a combination of the special privilege policy updates, or special privilege policy, as well as the religious artifacts on village property. If we can get that to community business relations, that would be. I think that's a really timely sort of conversation to have right now.
Okay, would that be there or JP&L?
It's it here as CNBR. So
okay.
We would.
Thank you. Trustee Amenta?
Yeah, I just want to clarify too that the 5 items we talked about in November, the 2 that only had 2 votes, were police union complaint, which I believe is moving forward anyhow, correct, Rebecca? Hello? Oh no, that one we already resolved.
Right.
But we have another complaint.
Mm-hmm.
And then consider the second CDA emergency business grant. I mean, I think we need to see if there's 4 votes for that.
I would agree. I
Well,
would
and
like to know whether there are 4 votes.
wouldn't that have to be organic? That would have to come, I would expect that to come through CDA first, no? Trustee Amenta?
I mean, I suppose we could ask the CDA to consider it if we, I mean, I know that the only money they have left is money for a loan fund, and we specifically talked about it at the CDA and didn't want to spend that money. So I'm not sure the CDA would go for it, but we could ask them to take a look at it, you know.
I guess my feeling is it would come through the bid first. Trustee Ursink?
No, I'm all in favor of voting on this and giving staff direction to start the conversation with what it be the CDA or the bid. I'm guessing it's going to be the CDA before the bid. But just to hear what Manager Ewald has to say.
Thank you. Manager Ewald?
The board ultimately sits in direction as to whether this gets done. So this is not a bid decision, and this is not a CDA. The CDA, if the board asks them to become engaged, quite frankly, right at this point in time, the CDA is tackling a lot of large issues. So there's a number of things that need to get done by March. So I'd like to know if we're gonna, because this would be it's a considerable effort. This is not light work. So if there is a push to go through and do this, then this is going to alter how we work on some other things. And I'm throwing it out there because I need to get realistic about what we can accomplish within a certain period of time. So to Trustee Amenta's point, and like what happened before, if the board is not in favor of this and will object to it, or there will not be a majority at a future point in time, I'd like to know that now so that we're not sinking in the time.
Well,
Okay, Trustee Warren, please.
yeah, I mean, in theory, this sounds like something I would vote to explore, but without knowing the contours of the actual loan or grant program and its downstream impact on the CDA and its ability to function, it's tough for me to say, yeah, I absolutely want to do this sight unseen as to, amount and whether it's a loan or a grant, when they're dispersed, who's eligible. I mean, I can't commit to voting yes on something that I can't see or is completely nebulous at this point. So I just don't know that I can make a vote one way or another on this. I mean, in concept, yes, I completely want to support our businesses, and this is a really tough environment, but I can't vote for a program that isn't designed yet.
Agreed. Trustee Ursink?
I'm wondering if we can kind of entertain the bid and get their opinion on it. I think they'd be a great knowledge base to move forward, having their opinion on if their businesses, if this is something the businesses need and how they would like to approach it. So I think we should utilize one of our community partners and check in with them to see if this is actually needed and how they would handle it, and maybe they could come back to us with a recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else on the possibility of community business loans? I'm sorry, grants. They're grants, right? Grants. I would agree. I think at this point we can start to see the light at the end of the tunnel. But to do it all at once with all this other on the schedule, I don't see it happening. Anyone else? Trustee Carpenter?
I'm hopeful that this is a light at the end of the tunnel. I do think that there has been some, there's been some announcement from the federal government as to some other things that hopefully are in the works. But I just have a hard time saying, yes, I want to move forward with something that I don't know what it looks like. So that's sort of where I stand right now, without a more solid and robust plan that I can really understand the impact. I can't support something I don't know what it looks like.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Amenta?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, if this is something the bid and the CDA or the bid wants to come to us with to propose, then I would be glad to look at it, but I don't see it as being high on our priorities at this time.
Thank you. And Trustee Bockhorst?
So if we are going to take that off, if we are going to take the two items or one or two items off that we do actually have votes for, how are we going to fill those spaces? I'm going to ask this another procedural question by going through tonight, or is this something I would recommend we come back if we want to add new items to this prioritization for Q1, because it's already 7:21 and I want to do this in a fair, transparent and democratic process. So just like we had direction from staff, from Rebecca before, as far as whittle this down, or maybe she gives us a direction as far as we prioritize, and all 6 of us who did this, all 6 of us on this call right now did this last time, and then we go forward. I think I've heard, you know, what's important to each and every one of you tonight. I think if we're going to be doing this again, we take a little time to digest, send the email and send it in, and then see where the cards fall, see where the votes land, instead of trying to figure it out on the fly. But if it's the will of the board to figure it out on the fly, then we at least need some kind of protocol and understanding of how we're going to do that. So those are my comments.
Okay, so it looks like we will not move forward with CDA grants at this point, but we would welcome input from the bid at a future meeting in January. Trustee Ursink?
Yeah, that sounds good. You know,
Okay.
I'll approach the bid and let them know kind of what we've decided at this meeting. And if they feel like it's an issue they want to move forward with, then they can come back to us with the recommendations.
Thank you. Manager Ewald, do you have anything else that you need from us? Any direction, a vote, or?
No, I think I
Not
have
all-
what I need for this evening.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn, please.
So
So-
moved.
So moved by trustee Amenta, seconded by trustee Ursink. All in favor?
Aye.
I
Hi.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned.